One day, a tortoise challenged a hare to a race. As the race began, the hare ran off into the distance until it could no longer see the tortoise. But soon it got hot and tired, so it decided to take a nap. The hare napped for too long though, and the tortoise, having never given up, won the race. That is the condensed story of the tortoise and the hare. And I say story because it's made up. This isn't something I saw looking out the window yesterday. It's a fable, and it was made up to teach young children a valuable life lesson. Does it though? I remember first hearing this story, this fable, when I was about 5 years old and thinking to myself, okay, this tortoise is great, but how do I become like it? How do I actually develop the winning characteristics of this tortoise? Again, I made that up. No 5-year-old thinks like that, unfortunately. But my point stands. The fable definitely highlights the importance of characteristics such as determination, persistence, and consistency. However, what it doesn't do is explain how you'd go about becoming determined, becoming persistent, and becoming consistent in a long-term, sustainable way. The answer is habit building. Let me explain. According to the Cambridge Dictionary, a habit is something that you do often and regularly, sometimes without knowing that you are doing it. Habits are the building blocks of our day-to-day lives. This morning, just like every other morning, I woke up and made my bed. That's a habit. Then I sat down to have breakfast, cornflakes with milk as usual. That's a habit. And then I switched on my phone and kept up my Duolingo streak. You guessed it, that's a habit. And as far as I'm concerned, that right there could have been a description of pretty much any one of my last 184 mornings. We all have countless tiny habits like these, and together they have a massive impact on our lives. I'd go as far as to say that they shape our lives, and in my case, my Spanish. Human behavior experts estimate that as many as 40% of our actions are carried out habitually. But here's the thing. We carry out our habits with very little conscious input, often entirely subconsciously. Does this mean that we have no conscious control over nearly every other decision we make? No, because at the end of the day, it is up to us to shape our habits. We shape our habits, and in turn, they shape us. As someone who has been putting a lot of effort into building habits and understanding the science behind them, ever since I really understood their importance, I can honestly say that I see so many aspects of my life really improve with every new habit I take up. By focusing on small, manageable habits, I have been able to make meaningful improvements to my life. And I'm aware that this may sound a little ambitious coming from a 17-year-old, but from my experience, here's the way to do it. Step 1, think of a goal. It can be as broad and as vague as, I want to exercise more. You know, a classic New Year's resolution, but it never sticks, does it? Why? Because it isn't specific enough. So, take that goal, and in step 2, narrow it down to one simple action that you can repeat on a regular basis. For example, I will do 10 push-ups every day, right? This is just an example. It can be anything for you. Now that's better, but it's still not easy enough for our brains to commit to. Step 3, the crucial step, add a cue. Find something specific in your environment that you can attach to your new habit. Instead of every day or every morning or even before bed, make it every time I put my shoes on, every time I have a meal, every time I brush my teeth, right? Something like that. So, using the 3-step process that I've named goal, action, cue, we have gone from I want to exercise more through I will do 10 push-ups every day to every time I brush my teeth, I will do 10 push-ups. That is something our brains can get behind. That is something we can commit to. Once you've designed what you want your habit to look like, all that's left to do is to start. At first, it will require conscious effort to carry out that habit, but as you repeat, and repeat, your brain will strengthen the neural paths between the neurons tied to the action of brushing your teeth and the neurons tied to the action of doing 10 push-ups. This eventually turns the conscious action into more of a subconscious habit. That is when you have won. And according to recent studies, it takes about 66 days for this to happen. Now, I'll admit, that's not overnight, but it isn't an unimaginable timescale to make such a difference, is it? Now, let's flip it all around. Going back to the tortoise and the hare, the moral of the story would be something along the lines of slow and steady wins the race, right? Well, that's what I thought myself, until I spoke to my dad, who is a very no-nonsense type of guy. He said to me, no. The tortoise didn't win the race. It was the hare that lost it, right? And therein lies the truth. It goes both ways. To quote James Clear, author of best-selling book Atomic Habits, habits are a double-edged sword. In other words, your habits can be just as dangerous and harmful to you as they can be beneficial. We all maintain bad habits. It's human. Eating too much unhealthy food, scrolling for hours on end, drinking too much coffee. These are all bad habits that many of us have, guilty, and what they all have in common is that, just like good habits, they involve a cue. There's always something in our environment that subconsciously triggers our brain to carry out that bad habit. For example, you're on your way to work or school and you see a delicious looking donut in the window of a donut shop and you think to yourself, oh wow, I'd like a donut. So you go inside and you have that donut. And then the next day you do it again because it was a really nice donut. And then you're doing it again and again and again, and why? Why in the end? Because it's just force of habit. Or the flashy Instagram icon on our home screens prompts us to open the app. How many times have we done this without even realizing it? Again, guilty. And sometimes just the scent of fresh coffee triggers an unignorable desire to have some right here, right now. These are all real-life cues, and as long as we have them in our environment, it's impossible to escape the bad habits they're associated with. So, instead of bravely battling those urges every time we encounter our cue, why not simply remove it, deal with the problem at its roots, and avoid those battles in the first place? Let's rethink our daily commute so we avoid the donut shop. Let's remove that Instagram icon from our home screens, and let's try our best to avoid the places where we know we'll smell fresh coffee. A few moments ago, I said that it is up to us to shape our habits. Let me rephrase that. It is up to us to shape the environment in which our habits occur, so that it is conducive to our good habits and inconducive to our bad ones. That is what we have conscious control over. Let's go back to the beginning, shall we? The real beginning of our story was long before the race had even begun. It was when the tortoise began building its good habits, transforming itself into the determined, persistent, and consistent tortoise that took step after step, not stopping until it reached the finish line. All the while, the hare, consumed by its environment full of cues for bad habits, took those exact same steps, but in the opposite direction, backwards. The hare had all the advantages it needed to succeed. It was fitter, it was faster, and obviously more agile. The tortoise, by nature, wasn't as fit, wasn't as fast, and definitely wasn't as agile, but it had its powerful habits. Now, imagine what a hare like you, with all your individual strengths and advantages, will be able to do when you begin replacing those bad habits with good ones. You'll win every race, right? So, here's what I challenge you to do. Visualize a bad habit that you have and identify its cue. This could be external, something you see, hear, smell, or internal, something you feel. Please, visualize that habit and identify its cue. Go ahead. Okay, now we're going to replace that bad habit with a good one using the goal-action-cue method. So think of a long-term goal you've always wanted to work towards. Now narrow it down to a simple, repeatable action. And here's the trick. Take that cue for your bad habit and attach it to your new desired action. What you have now is the perfect starting point for your own small but significant good habit. The next time you encounter that cue, be a tortoise, not a hare. Now, don't get me wrong, it will still require conscious effort to carry out the habit. You can't just do 10 push-ups without even realizing it. But it's the decision to do them that becomes effortless once you've formed that habit, which, if you start today, will be on May the 4th. In 66 days, on Star Wars Day, the Force will be with you. That is the beauty of habits. If just one person here is able to harness the power of habits, really be as strangely enthusiastic about them as I am, and use that to go beyond their boundaries, I will have achieved what I set out to do with this talk. Because at a time when so much of our lives are out of our control, why not gain a little back? Habits. Thank you.